it's Angelic Podfic, back with Better Luck Next Time by Nautical Warrior. Today I'll be reading Chapter 3, Springtime. Izuku is sore the next day. Sore in a way that he's only ever been after his worst beatings from his bullies. Oddly enough, the bullying has slowed down since he found out about his quirk, even though none of them know. He wonders how much it has to do with the way Kachan is avoiding him. He wonders if they're planning something big. He rolls out of bed and his stomach feels like it's been branded, poked with a red-hot iron and singed until the bones beneath are burned too. It makes him hiss, taking in air sharply and squeezing his eyes shut to push away the pain. Something about it is satisfying, though. If he'd ignored the situation, wouldn't the girl be in just as much pain or more? Isn't it better if it's me? School goes by in a blur. His boys sneer at him, whisper about him in the halls, but no one trips him or hits him or confronts him directly. It's easier to ignore when it's like this, when they're barely even bothering him. He's swept away in his head, reliving that fight over and over again. If he'd had a knife, he could have just cut the ropes. If he'd any kind of weapon, really, he'd been able to fight back more efficiently. Being functionally immortal doesn't really help if you can't actually fight in the first place, does it? So when school lets out, when it's late afternoon and the sky is a sodden gray with rain spilling out of the clouds and dripping in silver puddles on the sidewalk, Izuku hurries through the damp streets to a store he knows sells knives. He remembers going there with his mom when one of their kitchen knives had gotten so dull that it wouldn't really cut the vegetables right, and this store had whetstones. He remembers staring at the display of utility knives, kitchen knives, and some that were probably mostly for display, seeing as he's pretty sure they're illegal to take in public. By the time he gets to the storefront, the shoulders of his uniform and hair are soaked through, and he's shaking with the cold. He pushes open the door of the store and a bell tied to the top chimes softly. It's warm inside, white-yellow lights spilling out through the glass doors and onto the street outside. Izuku shivers despite the warm air. "Welcome," a woman behind the counter says to him, smiling at him behind square glasses. She sets down a calculator, placing it on top of a piece of paper heavily covered in pencil marks and ink, and she steps out from behind the counter. There's a black apron dusted with some gray and white powders wrapped around her, covering a flowery blouse and a pair of well-worn jeans. She looks like a high schooler, maybe a first-year college student. "Is there anything I can help you find?" she asks, a polite smile on her lips. She pushes one of her low pigtails back behind her shoulder. Izuku says eloquently. He's not used to talking to girls, much less pretty ones. "I came to get some knives?" She tilts her head at him. "What kind are you looking for?" Izuku swallows. "Something I could use for self-defense," he answers, voice quiet. Her smile drops and she nods seriously, like she gets it. "Let me show you what we have," she says, gesturing for him to follow as she walks down an aisle of steel shelves. Izuku realizes that the store is mostly hardware and weapons in the first place, and he figures that's why they've only ever gone the one time. He and his mom doesn't really have a use for weapons, and their landlord is good about repairs when things do break. He eyes the plumbing material, looks at how many different shapes of piping and connectors there, and decides it's best that he's never had to mess with it. She stops in front of a board that has display shelves built into it, each shelf holding a number of knives. Izuku recognizes it from years ago, when he'd come here with his mom, but the order of things is still all different and the knives seem smaller. It's intimidating how many options there are. "What kind of budget you working with?" she asks, and Izuku tells her how much money he's willing to spend. She nods, looking over the knives thoughtfully. You'll want something that's easy to conceal to carry on with you. No point of having a knife for self-defense if it's never there for you to use, right? She reaches up to a shelf and takes down a knife with a blade about as long as Izuku's palm. The handle is a little longer than the blade. It's simple, straight, and he watches as she folds the blade easily into the handle. I like this one because it has a good weight to it, she says, voice a mumble, almost like she's not talking to him. It's easy to open up too, and she flicks a button and snaps her wrist, the knife opening easily. She snaps it shut with both hands, then offers it to him. Izuku takes it. Thank you, he says, holding the metal knife in his hand. The handle is black and textured for grip, cold and weighty in his hand. He copies what she did earlier, trying to snap the knife open with a flick of the wrist, but it doesn't open. She chuckles. Sorry, I should have said. It's hard to open with one hand if you haven't practiced. She rubs a hand on the back of her head, and for the first time, Izuku notices a large yellowing bruise on the inside of her wrist. He wonders if she gets bullied too. Izuku swallows, then opens the knife with both hands. The blade is so shiny that it almost looks soft, and he can see his wavering reflection in it along with the glowing reflections of the industrial lights above them. The blade snaps into place, the weight of it feeling foreign in his hands, but it also feels good. It smells like iron. Oh, and if you get that, you should have some extra cash, she says, and Izuku carefully presses the button and closes the knife, holding it in his palm. He watches as she leans up and takes another knife down from the top shelf. She turns to him, a small smile on her face as she offers him a strange-looking weapon. The handle is shaped like a grip, with grooves for each of his fingers, and the blade sticks out between where his middle and ring finger should go. A thin double-sided blade with of silvery metal. This one's for punching, she says, her voice picking up excitedly. These are so fun, really. And if you know how to throw a punch, you'll be fine using it. She grips it in her hand, showing Izuku the way it fits her fist and sticks out from her fingers, wicked sharp. He wonders, briefly, if it's legal for him to have these. I'll take both, he says. She smiles wide at him. Great, I'll get you ringed up, she says, holding out a hand and offering the strange punching knife. He takes it from her gingerly. He turns and walks back to the register, and he follows, glancing at all the other stuff in the store. They sell bullets, strangely, but no guns. And he sees a lot of mismatched stuff around the place, like fishing tackle, even though there isn't much fishing around here. It's odd, but certainly not the strangest thing he's seen. When he catches up to her at the register, she's sliding a sheath across the glass counter. For the one that doesn't fold, she says, smiling. This way you won't accidentally cut yourself. Izuku takes it with a shaky nod and watches as she types things into her calculator, scribbling down notes as she goes. All right, she says, and gives him the total. He hands over the cash, and she opens the register, drawing with a ding, stuffing the bills into their overfull drawers. When he gets home, after he thanks her and walks through the rainy streets of Musatafu, after he takes his damp shoes off and reassures his mom that he wasn't out in the rain for long enough to get sick, he places the knives and pouches on his utility belt. He sits in his room at his desk and Googles how to use knives in combat, how to throw a punch, and how to defend himself. He might have a quirk, but he can't rely on it for every situation. Endless tries means nothing if he loses every time, right? The next time he goes out into the streets, he's more careful. He keeps his hand on his belt, next to his knives, and he walks through the streets more cautiously, looking down alleyways even if all he hears is talking. It's darker than the night with the 3 men and the girl because he had to wait until the bruises on his stomach healed enough that he could fight if he needed to, so that he can move freely. The moon is a thin slit in the sky, silvery white where it hovers among the stars. Izuku walks through the streets, careful not to let his feet drag against the ground. The city is loud, even at night, and he can hear the heavy bass of music playing in a nearby club. The lights of the billboards and open signs paints the street, still damp from the rain that morning and the morning before that, in a rainbow of bright colors streaking across puddles and reflecting off the dark ground. Izuku hears the fight before he sees it, just like last time. It sounds different though, like two men growling and shouting at each other, like the sounds of fists meeting flesh. Izuku turns down the street the sounds are coming from the second he hears it. And he doesn't have to bother hiding himself because the two guys are brawling it out in front of a bar, aren't even looking. There's blood dripping down from one of their noses, running down his already stained white shirt and dripping onto the concrete. The air smells like alcohol and sweat, salty and volatile. Izuku draws his knife, the normal one, and opens it before getting closer. He holds it by his side, hand turned out so the blade catches the light of the bar. The neon pink and bright red lights that decorate the front of the building. He angles the light so it reflects into one of the guy's eyes, stopping a few feet from him. "Break it up," he says, trying to make his voice lower than it really is. The guy with the bloody nose pauses, and the guy who isn't bleeding follows suit. They both stare at him, clearly drunk. They're swaying. "Who the fuck are you?" one of them asks, swaying. "Doesn't matter," Izuku says. "Stop fighting." He raises the knife, pointing it at them, and it seems to do the trick. The two of them glance at each other, and the man with the bloody nose huffs, turning and walking away. The other guy turns and walks back into the bar, slamming the door behind him. Izuku stares for a moment, then turns and walks the opposite direction from where the bloody nose dude went. It's a strange sensation having people listen to him. He kinda likes it. Studying for the entrance exam is something Izuku saves mostly for the weekends, when he doesn't have school to take up his daytime. He spends his afternoon on the beach cleaning and his evenings sleeping and patrolling the streets, with not a moment to spare for studying or relaxing. So it's a lazy Sunday morning that finds him hunched over his notebooks at his desk, reviewing his math over and over again. His back aches from sitting too long, and his left arm is bruised from blocking a hit the night before. He's still just breaking up fights and stopping little crimes, nothing crazy and nothing of note, but he keeps managing to get little injuries that annoy him and make cleaning the beach slow work. Watching self-defense videos and using knives helps, but he hasn't cut anyone yet, but they work wonderfully as a deterrent. He shakes his head, forcing himself to refocus on the equation he's trying to figure out. It's been a few months since they went over this, but he can't help feel stupid for not remembering such a simple concept. He knows this is on the UA entrance exam, according to an online forum he's always on. They include a few topics from each subject in the exam every year, and the rest vary. He wants to make sure that, if nothing else, his written exam is perfect. He knows he's not going to be able to rely on the practical portion, not with his quirk. His vision is blurry, though, and his eyes sting and burn when he blinks. He squeezes his right hand tighter around the pencil, trying to ground himself and get his brain to work already. It doesn't work. He can feel the chair under his legs, the pencil tight in his hand, and his nails biting into his palm, but he can't focus on the schoolwork in front of him. He knows somewhere in his mind that he's been working for too long, but he also knows that he has to overwork himself to get into UA without a useful quirk. He doesn't have a choice. A soft knock on the frame of his door pulls him out of his thoughts. He turns to see his mom at the open door of his bedroom, a tray in her hands with a glass of iced water and a steaming bowl of rice. She smiles at him. "Izuku," she says, stepping into the room and setting the tray on his desk. "You didn't eat anything for lunch." He watches a droplet of condensation roll down the surface of the glass. "Thanks, Mom," he says, looking up at her and giving her a huge grin. She smiles wider back at him and gives him a pat on the back. "I know it's important that you get into UA, but don't forget that your health is important too," she says, glancing down at his notes. "Oh, is that what you're working on?" Izuku nods. I can't remember how to do it, he admits, his face flaring red. Oh well, Inko says, picking up his pen. I do something similar at work a lot. I can help you if you want. Izuku nods. Yes, please. When his mom walks him through the problem, writing her own neat notes next to his and telling him how he uses it, she uses these for her own job, how she remembers the tricks and equations, it's easier to focus. He gets through the material while he eats warm rice and drinks cold water. And before he knows it, his mom's pulled up a chair and they're working through all the weekend's tasks in just a few hours. The last day of middle school is surreal. He sits through the closing ceremony in his uniform, feeling out of place, feeling old. He doesn't really listen to what anyone giving speeches says. He just sits and waits for it to be all over. High school will be better. There's nowhere to go but up from here, right? When the ceremony ends, he starts to walk home because where else would he go? It's not like he has friends except maybe Kachan. Izuku honestly isn't even sure if Kanchan counts anymore. He hasn't really spoken to him except for a few snide comments, not since that day with the sludge villain. In some ways, Izuku is okay with it. He was getting tired of the bullying, of going home and hiding burns from his mom. At least it gave me practice hiding the injuries, he thinks, and pain tolerance. He steps into the tunnel that he's been attacked in. He steps into the tunnel that he'd been attacked in on that fateful day, the shadow of the bridge above casting the walkway in a soft gray shade. It's an unseasonably warm day, and it's pleasant to be in the shade as opposed to miserably cold as it would normally be this time of year. It's earlier than they would normally get out of school too, so that could be why. The cherry blossom trees have just started to bloom, and the wind brushes soft pink petals under the bridge in little drifts, almost like tiny snowflakes. Izuku watches them as he walks, drags his feet along, and kicks them in front of him. Maybe that's why he doesn't see the kids from his middle school until he literally runs into them. He steps back with a start and looks up in surprise to see three of the kids that have bullied him for the past 3 years. Hit him in the hallways and held him while Kachan burned him after school. He bites his lip and takes a step back. Deku, one of the boys sneers, reaching out to grip his shoulder. It's been a while. And it has. Izuku was starting to think he was free from all of this. Izuku pushes the boy's hand off him with his other hand, stepping back again. They draw closer, though, and he finds himself settling into the fighting stance he's used at night, on the roads and in alleyways. One of them, his shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, laughs at him. What, you gonna fight back for once? He shakes his head, turning to look at one of his buddies. Wouldn't it make sense to do that at the beginning of the school instead of the end? Stupid Deku. The other guy starts to laugh, and Izuku isn't sure why he throws the punch at the guy whose head is still turned, but he does. His knuckles crack satisfyingly against the boy's face, and the kid stumbles back, gripping his face with a hand. What the hell? One of the other kids throws a messy punch at him, but it's slow and weak compared to the grown adults Izuku's fought and intimidated the past month. He knocks it away with one hand and elbows the kid in the gut with the other arm. The guy grunts when it makes contact, folding over and gripping his stomach. God, what the fuck? One of them asks. But Izuku doesn't waste any time. He pushes past them and runs. Runs like he's never really dared to before. He runs and runs, the trees all around him, but in green from the springtime warmth, flowing together with his speed. He runs, and he doesn't stop till he's far past his house, in the part of town that's loud and alive at night, but quiet and sad during the day. He stops in front of a random building, a short, squat thing that has a closed sign in its front and is clearly some sort of nightclub. He catches his breath with his hands on his knees, gasping and blinking back tears. He feels sick when he thinks about what he's done. He fought back. I'm really gonna get it tomorrow, he thinks, before remembering that, oh, today was the last day. I'm free. He laughs. I'm free. Then he drops to the ground, sitting with his knees pulled to his chest and laugh crying to an abandoned street. He's sure he looks like a mess, his uniform messy from sitting in the dirt and his face surely red and streaked with tears, but he doesn't care. From now on, he doesn't have to deal with those kids and their fists. He doesn't have to deal with their whispers. It'll be better at UA, he tells himself. It has to be. A couple of nights later, he's in his costume and he feels so alive. The sounds of nighttime, of muffled music and dancing leaks through the walls of the buildings, of flickering streetlights and quiet arguments, of crickets and cicadas hiding in the grass. They sound like home to him now. He knows this part of town like the back of his hand, knows which bars usually have fights outside them and which alleyways people like to sell drugs in. He even knows which heroes patrol the area, and it isn't many. He's only seen a Razorhead that one time, and since then he's seen a couple of sidekicks. He supposes the higher-ranking heroes prefer to work in the daytime, where they can get media recognition. It's a quieter night as far as partying goes. He thinks it's because it's a Wednesday night, and most people who have jobs or school can't be out too late during the weekdays. He's also out a little later than normal. He'd overslept. It's a cloudy night, making it darker than it should be, and the sky is an inky black mess of clouds above him. He wonders if it'll rain. He listens for the sound of thunder, but all he hears is a shout. He turns his head in the direction it came from, looking through goggles for any sign of a fight, but he's too far away. He moves carefully down the street, keeping his steps even with the beat of the music from the nearest nightclub. This is the best way to conceal the noise his footsteps make, he's learned. Suddenly, from behind a parked truck with its lights on, 2 projectiles shoot past him, moving so quickly he can't even see what they are. Izuku immediately drops into a fighting stance, his hands pulling knives from his belts. He flicks open the one that folds, having finally mastered the trick the other day, and he tucks the one he can use for punching into his left hand. He creeps around the truck slowly, walking sideways to keep his body facing where the threat is. He sees a huge beast of a man, easily over 6 feet tall and covered in bristling spines, each about 2 feet in length and made of thick keratinous material that shines in the light from the headlights of the truck. He's cornering 4 partygoers, a man and 3 women, against a wall. A hedgehog quirk, Izuku thinks, then cringes as the man fires 2 spines forwards, pinning the man to the concrete wall behind him. The spines dig deep into the concrete, cracking it with their force. Porcupine, his brain helpfully supplies as the man turns his angry glare to look at Izuku. Izuku remembers what he heard in one of his videos. If your opponent is skilled in ranged combat, get close. So he does, dashing forwards and sliding into the porcupine man's personal space. He slashes with the knife in his right hand but misses, just a few centimeters short. The man growls and swings a fist at Izuku, and for all Izuku sees it coming, he can't dodge in time. The hit to his chest sends him stumbling back, and he barely has enough time to straighten back up before the man shoots a volley of 3 slick, dark brown spines at him. Izuku feels a rush of burning pain as they sink into him, one into his right thigh, one in his left calf, and the third at the bottom of his stomach, just above his left hip. He recognizes that he drops to the ground from the way his viewpoint gets lower, but all he can register is the white-hot pain and the feeling of his insides grating on the spine embedded into his stomach when he gasps for air. He can't feel either of his legs except for the blinding pain, but he does feel when the man kicks him right where the spine is lodged in his belly, knocking it deeper and making Izuku gag from pain, throwing up his mom's cooking and sour acid all over the dirty ground. He tries to pull himself away, crawling on the ground with gloves soaked through his own vomit and blood, but he doesn't get very far before his limbs start responding to his request. His hands grow weak, tingly, like they're falling asleep. And Izuku registers that he feels very, very cold. He tries to sit up, tries to do anything, but his body doesn't move except for a twitch. His vision is swirling black and he dry heaves, his stomach and throat spasming as he loses consciousness. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this, leave a comment, leave kudos for the author, Nautical Warrior. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in chapter 4.